Greetings. In this video I'll be painting a veteran sergeant from the 1st Company of the Size of the Emperor chapter. This model has a fair bit of detail, and I edited an STL of a pauldron to add their armorial to it, and printed that out. Some other parts are printed too. I started by applying the typical black primer, but then started by doing a gloss varnish over the pauldron, and a section of his thigh, in preparation for some decals I'll apply later. While waiting for the gloss varnish to cure, I got a small makeup brush to act as a dry brush, and I used Eshin grey to hit every surface that I intended to keep black. This is pretty much just the legs, the arm, and the stalker bolt rifle though. After I finished applying a dusty coat of Eshin grey, I switched Mechanicus standard grey and applied a much more reserved amount, from the top down. These two will hopefully work together to make the black a bit more dynamic. I'm not too sure about all these fancy words people use for this stuff. For the decals I used a veteran marking with a high Gothic numeral, as well as a campaign badge from Impatient Tabletop. These decals are not pre-cut, so you have to cut around the shape using a sharper knife than I used. And here are the decals in place with microset and microsol. Now for the yellow. I decided to use Averland Sunset and build up a number of thin layers. I considered doing brown before the yellow, as that's a closer colour to it than black is, and would have gone on a bit easier, but this wasn't too bad to layer up. I think it was 3 or 4 layers depending on how thick the paint was when I applied it. I didn't bother about covering spots that I knew would be another colour, like the power pack details and the Imperialis. I painted in the armorial with the same colour, as well as the left knee pad, which signifies him as a veteran when there's a black skull on top. I also painted in the yellow on this decal, as I wanted it to match the rest of the scheme. To shade the yellow, I decided to try Cassandora Yellow. This is a yellow-orange wash, which will give a warmer feeling to it. The Astartes 2 teaser trailer showed some Scythes in some orange light. Earlier though they were in more neutral lighting, but it looked pretty cool, so this is a bit of a compromise. It's not orange, but it's not pale yellow. I left it to dry for half hour, and then went back to the Averland Sunset to clean up. As I applied the wash all over the yellow, I needed to bring back the yellow colour, as it was a bit dark afterwards. Happy with the yellow for now, I switched to Leadbelcher and began painting in the various metallic decals. The molecular bonding studs on the greave were fun, though I considered doing them yellow like you see in the early parts of the Astartes 2 trailer. The knife, the bolter, the chain around his waist, as well as the helmet and power pack details were base coated with this colour. Now onto Mephiston red for the helmet and optic lens, wrist light, and the gem on the crux. Sergeants for the size of the Emperor haven't been shown in media, at least not with unique markings, so I went with Codex Standard here. I did a highlight of the previous red with Sunz Scarlet. The Scythes website displays the same sergeant markings as I've chosen, so I'm fairly happy with this decision. For the eye lenses I went with Wild Rider Red as my next layer. The Scythes website displays red, and while I would usually go with a green on a red helmet like this, I'll go with the Forge Master's decision here. I also used this colour for a little edge highlight on the helmet ear cowlings. Next I used Lugganath orange to dot the eye lenses, the wrist light, optic lens, and the gem on the crux. I went too heavy on the eye lenses however, making it look really odd, so I went back to Wild Rider Red and filled most of it in. Now for the leather. I used Rhinox hide to base coat the sling, the belt, the scroll on the weapon, and any pouches. Next I used Scrag Brown to highlight the edges in a scratchy and uneven method, hoping to add a worn look to the material. Finally I did a pass with Deathclaw Brown over the same areas, just with a little less. Now on to Ulthorn Grey for the white bits. The Imperialis to denote the first company, and the stripe on the helmet to denote veteran sergeant status. And once again going from the Scythes website here, they've compiled a bunch of sources and filled in the blanks where possible. For the stripe I followed the intake on the top of the helmet, trying then to get a straight line down towards the eye lenses. I then went back to Evil Sunz Scarlet to clean up the stripe. Now for the gold. I used Retributor Armour here, painting in the crux, the knife handle, and the skull on the helmet. To highlight the gold I went straight to Liberator gold. I skipped the wash as these parts are a bit too small for a wash to stand out here. I also used this colour to mark out the cartridges in the Stalker Bolt Rifle's magazine windows. They should look nice and subdued like this. For the parchment I used Steel Legion Drab. A simple base coat here, but I left a bit of the brown I applied earlier in the deep recesses. Following that I applied Morghast Bone in a similar application so the edges are shaded nicely. Next I used a 0.15mm micron pen to write Sotha on the scroll. I messed up the first pass, so I wiped it down and reapplied Morghast Bone, then tried again. This one came out a bit nicer. I went back to Averland Sunset to clean up around the white, then switched to Aerial Yellow to apply some highlights. The Gorget received a fairly big pass, as it's a very prominent upwards facing surface. I did some edge highlights around various details like the buckle, and applied a fairly heavy but scratchy layer to the top of the power pack. This will tie in nicely with the weathering I was planning. I switched to Abaddon Black to clean up some errors, and to paint in the cables on the back of the torso. I wanted to work on the tab art a bit. It was looking a bit too similar to the armour. I started with Skaven Blight Dinge, and applied fairly big layers all over the visible folds, leaving the innermost bits as the previous colour. I then used Dark Reaper and applied some narrower layers to the same spots, focusing more towards the edges to give it a bit more light depth. I was happy with the progress so far, but I wanted it to stand out a bit more, so I switched to Thunderhawk Blue and repeated the process in an even smaller area, mostly applying edge highlights both along the actual edges and where I felt it was necessary in the middle of the surfaces. I also did a few scratches here and there, trying to make it look a little bit more weathered. This thing would be flapping around as he runs, hitting all sorts of stuff. To finish it off, I tried using rust grey, doing tiny dots along the edges and scratches I painted with Thunderhawk blue, emphasising spots I wanted to stand out further. It may look a bit too blue now, but under more natural light I think it looks really good. I do use a cold light here for recording though, so that might be skewing the picture a bit. With the tabard done, I moved on to weathering the rest of the model. I used Karak stone to do some chipping effects on the black. This is my first time attempting to do a chipping effect on black armour, but I think this came out really good. For the yellow armour I used Rhinox hide, doing similar chipping effects as the black armour. For the power pack however, I do some really heavy weathering along the top. Like I said last time I weathered a power pack like this, in Space Marine 2 your guy rolls around a lot to dodge incoming attacks. This thing is definitely going to get banged up. Back to the silver metallics, I used a dark grey wash to shade the metals. I did a fairly heavy application on the blade, hoping it would help highlight the edges for me. A half hour later the wash had dried, so I went in with Runefang steel and highlighted various spots on the steel to bring the shine back a bit. I did a rough highlight of the knife blade, which ended up looking pretty awesome. Finally I moved on to an enamel wash. This isn't super necessary for this model, but the yellow and white needed a bit of shading, so I did a light pass over the entire model to tie it all together. I did my usual basing method, and the model was done. And here we have it, a veteran sergeant of the size of the Emperor First Company. I'm super happy with this one. I think it's one of the best things I've painted to date, but I might be biased as I've always loved this chapter. I do have two minor grievances however. When I was cleaning up the black, I didn't notice how the gun casing was more of a grey following the dry brush I did. This left an obvious chunk visible after I used the black to clean it up. I didn't notice that until after I was done recording. The other thing is the eye lenses. I feel like they don't stand out enough. Red on red can be difficult, and without making the eyes brighter it looks like I forgot to paint them. I definitely need to work on my finer detailing skills. Maybe get some sort of magnification. Not sure. Otherwise I think the model came out great. As I mentioned at the start, I used some 3D printed parts here. I have no idea where I found the body. Both it and the power pack have been removed by the authors, so you can see why people are reluctant to advertise these parts in the video description, or in the comments section. The body's similar to ones found in the current Sternguard Veterans box. It's just that I couldn't justify buying a box of these, just for a few videos, especially when I don't get any kickback. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. If you have any video suggestions, let me know in the comments, and I'll add them to my list. I've currently got 4 chapters on there that have been requested that I need to do, including the Blood Ravens, which was one of the first asked of me. I just want to do them justice, you know. Anyway, I hope you'll stick around for the next one.